A previous Pope wrote the shroud was, quote, a truly mysterious image which no human artistry was capable of producing. Lara, but we have the book, the broadcast, and now the app.
For centuries, a lone linen cloth has puzzled the world, said to bear the face of a crucified man. Scientists dismissed it as legend, believers hailed it as evidence, but then artificial intelligence joined the fray. What it found wasn't a painting or a mark, but something odder. Hidden patterns, coded repetitions, a structure woven into ancient fibers that shouldn't be there. Is it chance, divine, or something we weren't meant to uncover? What mystery does the Shroud of Turin still guard? The Shroud of Turin is more than a relic. It's a tale that won't fade. Spanning 14 feet long and just over 3 feet wide, its herringbone twill catches light like a wave on calm water. A faint image of a man lies across it, head to toe, front and back, as if a body rested briefly and vanished without wrinkling the cloth, leaving only a shadow. The wounds tell a story etched in fiber, wrist marks where nails might pierce, a blood-like stain at the feet, an oval on the side hinting at a spear's thrust, faint rings suggesting a crown of thorns pressed into the scalp. The face doesn't demand attention. It lingers, eyes shut, beard split, hair falling in strands that seem to hover above the weave, as if the cloth and image once held space apart. Its first recorded showing was in 13th century France, in a small town that became a hub for pilgrims and a stage for skepticism. Crowds flocked, priests paraded, doubters called it a church-made spectacle. The cloth passed through many hands until the House of Savoy took it to Turin, where in 1578 it began its long watch, paused only by fire, smoke, and rescue. Now it lies in a climate-controlled case in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, where glass and steel shield it from time, and time shields it from certainty. One moment shifted its story most. A photograph in 1898. Lawyer Secondo Pia positioned his plates and lamps, working in the faint glow of a makeshift darkroom. Developing the negative, he expected blurred tones. Instead, a face gazed back with striking clarity. The negative looked like a positive. The cloth's faint image turned into a vivid portrait on film. Cheekbones sharpened, lips took shape, hair split into strands, hands crossed at the pelvis gained form and balance. This reversal proved nothing, except that the image danced with light, unlike any paint would. Yet, it changed the dialogue. The relic moved from faith to enigma. The lab joined the sanctuary. Through the 20th century, the cloth faced tests as meticulous as they were probing. Chemists teased apart fibers and tested them with reagents. Microscopes roamed the surface. Forensic experts noted blood-like stains marked the threads, not the image marking the blood. Textile scholars measured yarn twists, comparing them to ancient Levant looms. Pollen analysts found grains matching Eastern Mediterranean plants. Each finding seemed to tilt the debate, never settling it. Not conclusive enough to quiet skeptics, not trivial enough to soothe believers. The shroud did what it always does. It offered just enough to demand another test. The image itself defied pigment's rules. No binding layer, no brush strokes, no deep soak into the threads. The discoloration rests on the tips of the outermost fibrils, as if touched by light and left untouched. Depth maps tied image darkness to the theoretical distance from a body's surface, a bold claim, yet measurable. If cloth lay closer to nose and brow than cheeks, darkness should shift with distance. Efforts to mimic this with heat, vapor, or chemicals came close but never matched. The shroud stayed unique, a kind way of saying it stood firm. As theories rose and fell. Then came the age debate's blaze. In 1988, 3 labs received threads from one corner of the cloth. They tested radiocarbon and dated it to the 13th or 14th century. For many, that verdict was clear and final, wrapping the mystery in one line. But even clear lines hide caveats. The sampled corner near an edge had seen handling, repair, and smoke. Textile experts suggested it might include later threads from a medieval reweave. Others questioned the cleaning process. Some noted a single spot can't speak for a well-traveled artifact. The debate didn't end, it evolved. If the date holds, the image is a stunning medieval creation. If it's off, the age remains open. The cloth kept defying simplicity, so the shroud carried its paradox into our time. An image acting like a negative before cameras existed, a surface mark without paint, a depth pattern hinting at spatial data, a disputed age that may say more about sampling than origins, a puzzle inviting both awe and scrutiny. Into this tension came a new voice. It brought no faith or doubt. It brought algorithms. It brought a knack for spotting patterns too faint for eyes or too vast for minds. The machine didn't care about the question. It was built to ask a sharper one. What exactly lies in this image we haven't yet measured? If photography unveiled the face and chemistry charted the fibers, what happens when a system built to find order in chaos turns its gaze to linen? The 1988 radiocarbon test was the Shroud's most defining modern moment. Promising resolution, Oxford, Zurich, Arizona, 3 labs, 1 method. A corner snippet was split among them, cleaned, burned, turned to graphite, and measured in accelerators that turn isotopes into years. The world awaited clarity and got a tidy range, 1260 to 1390. Newspapers ran the dates, calling them final. Museums sighed. The tale seemed done. That corner, though, became one of the most studied spots on any artifact. The lower left, touched by countless hands, possibly mended after a known 16th century fire. Textile chemist Raymond Rogers claimed the corner's fibers showed chemical differences from the main cloth, with cotton mixed into linen and traces of dye or repair. If that corner holds later material, the sample would lean modern. Defenders of the test say the labs verified their cleaning and checked uniformity. Critics counter that subtle repairs can slip past quick checks while skewing radiocarbon results. The debate thrives in that slim gap between trust and caution. Other approaches joined in, not to topple radiocarbon, but to broaden the view. Wide-angle X-ray scattering on cellulose structure in ancient textiles has, in some tests, suggested an earlier date than the medieval range. Critics warn that humidity, heat, and storage can distort the signal, making calibration tricky and error ranges wide. Supporters argue every method has flaws, and alignment across techniques outweighs any single result. Even pollen studies weigh in. Grains from Levant native plants don't confirm origin, they hint at travel or exposure. Paired with weave studies and reported herb traces, they sketch a partial picture, consistent with antiquity, though not proof of it. The most fascinating part of this debate is how it hinges on access. The shroud isn't a lab specimen, it's a cherished relic. Sampling is rare and cautious, as it must be to preserve it. That means any test relies heavily on a tiny area. Probability then plays a cruel trick. A slight error in the sample can skew the entire conclusion. A few threads shape a theory. A patch near a seam defines an era. Scientists crave more samples across a grid. Custodians prioritize protection. Caught between these urges, the debate grows fiercer. If the 1988 date is spot on, The shroud is a medieval masterpiece. Yet that doesn't explain how the image formed, as no known medieval method matches its surface-level detail and spatial precision. If the date is wrong, the possibilities widen, not to certainty, but to a timeline that could reach the early centuries. That's not proof the cloth held Jesus. It just reopens the question faith poses and science probes. Into this open question steps artificial intelligence, like an impartial umpire. It doesn't touch the cloth's edge, it sifts the data. It asks what we can learn without snipping another thread. AI can't date linen, but it can scan the image at resolutions, frequencies, and transforms that make patterns stand out over noise. It checks if intensity shifts align with contact, projection, or another effect. It studies how blood-like stains interact with the image and whether order suggests a process. It spots symmetry the eye catches and symmetry-only math reveals. AI doesn't replace carbon dating or cellulose analysis. It's a partner saying the when debate shouldn't halt the how inquiry. When a test screams case closed, but an effect whispers not yet, the answer isn't picking a side, it's crafting a new test. The shroud begs for that test with its quiet anomalies. The move from microscopes and chemicals to algorithms started subtly. High-resolution shroud photos, including multispectral sets capturing ultraviolet and infrared, have existed for years. Feeding those into systems trained to spot faint signals changes not just the amount of data, it changes the type. Principal component analysis sifts variations. Convolutional networks hunt recurring shapes. Frequency filters uncover rhythms hidden in the weave. These don't create new data. They reorganize it so patterns rise above chaos. When those patterns first appeared on screens, some expected them to confirm the obvious. A face, a body, hands, stains. Instead, the analysis revealed something eerie. It showed structure that didn't look like brushstrokes, stamps, or transfers. It looked like an unwritten rule. Before this, 3D models had tackled an older puzzle. If a cloth draped a body and the image came from contact, touching areas would mark strongly, and non-touching areas would be faint or blank. Such contact maps distort, especially at shoulders, cheeks, and fingers. Digital artists draped virtual cloth over models, rendering theoretical marks. The distortions didn't match the shroud's balanced proportions. When the cloth was pictured over a shallow relief instead of a full body, the fit got better. This didn't mean the shroud sat on a statue, it meant contact alone didn't explain the image. Something closer to distance mapping seemed at play. AI stepped in, unmoved by sentiment. It treated pixel intensity as a stand-in for image depth and found a persistent link. Darker meant closer, lighter meant farther, within a narrow range. A hand-painted image, even a brilliant one, would likely lose this link at small scales. A pigment pressed from a relief would show fiber direction and depth not matching the shroud's surface-only effect seen under microscopes. The image acts as if something embedded spatial data without leaving material behind. These are cautious words for a reason. There's no claim the cloth caught a projection or that radiation seared a pattern into linen. There's only the note that when smart tools ask what order explains the link between intensity and shape, it leans mathematical, not artistic. The discoloration sits on fibril tips, microns deep, not sinking into the core. Edges blur softly, crossing thread gaps without clogging them. Even laser tests by independent teams struggled to mimic this shallow, even effect on linen without burning or spreading. The question isn't spiritual, it's physical. What process could deliver energy so precisely it changes only the outer fiber tips in a gradient tied to distance? When researchers stacked spectrally varied images into one analytic frame, they spotted another oddity: faint symmetry around the face and chest, unrelated to fabric folds or camera glitches. The pattern held across transforms, survived noise removal, and persisted when regions were shuffled as controls. Skepticism labels such finds as processing artifacts until proven otherwise. Curiosity insists on exploring a pattern that keeps showing up as methods shift. If this image is a contact fluke, we'd see chaos. If it's art, we'd see tool marks. If it's neither, we've encountered a process we haven't mastered. The phrase "just found" can mislead if it implies a breakthrough from nothing. What AI revealed in the Shroud was drawn from existing data, unnoticed until a machine traced its edges. Beneath the face and body, patterns emerged, ratios echoing across brow, lips, and chin, faint curves mirroring ribs and shoulders. Even the blurred hands held repetitions unrelated to the weave. The geometry endured under ultraviolet and visible light, passing tests that should have shattered illusions. How can symmetry hide in cloth for centuries? Skeptics suggested confirmation bias, as networks often spot faces in clouds or toast. To dodge that, researchers used neutral methods like principal component analysis, stripping out assumptions. Even then, the result didn't form a face. It formed a field where brightness ebbed and flowed as if following a rule, not a brush. If this is a rule, what kind? Can cloth act like a map of unseen forces, not just a blank canvas? Others warned of halos or false symmetries from image processing. Analysts went back to raw photos from different decades, cameras and filters. The structure held firm. Control linens treated with heat or stains showed artifacts, but not the same ratios. The cautious conclusion: the Shroud's image isn't one of a kind, but it's distinct. If not a camera trick or weave illusion, what force kept the geometry steady across light bands? The blood-like stains sparked fresh questions. Instead of muddling the geometry, they seemed irrelevant. The ratios persisted beneath them, unbothered by added layers. This hinted the image and stains came from separate processes. If so, the mystery grows. Did one event mark the cloth chemically while another carved its geometry? Or does the cloth hold two overlapping but unrelated tales? What do you think this order points to? Which constraint would you test first? If you believe mysteries deserve care, subscribe and stay. The next artifact, the next light, may finally reveal how linen captured a moment beyond our reach.